Hello everyone. Welcome to this session on cloud computing fundamentals and basics of Microsoft Azure. So the agenda for today and what are its characteristics, service models, deployment models, and more importantly, we'll understand why we should go for cloud when the entire world is moving towards cloud today. Why we should also go for cloud, and what are the current trends in the cloud computing in today's world, especially after COVID-19. What are the trends which we are seeing across the industry. And to start with, if you Microsoft Azure public cloud is one of the clouds. We will see what are other cloud providers, but if somebody wants to start a career in Microsoft Azure cloud, what kind of roles and certifications are available, we will have a quick look at it. So this is a generic, very generic definition provided by NIST. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology in US. They defined cloud. This is a very early definition of cloud, but it is very true today itself, even after 10 years. So hence I've included it. And it is defined as how NIST perceived cloud is as, they have divided into three major buckets of characteristics, service models, and deployment models. So what they say is any cloud provider who say that they are cloud provider, they can term their service as a cloud if it is accessible on demand over internet, and whatever services they offer are offered as a pool of configurable services like a virtual machine or a storage. So when you say configurable, it means that a user should have a facility to configure what hardware infrastructure they need, whether they need a 2 CPU server or a 10 CPU server, whether they need a 500 GB of hard disk or whether they need 2 terabytes of hard disk. So that kind of configuration should be allowed. And again, it should be a shared pool of resources so that once the user is completed his work on cloud, they can release the resources back to the pool. And it should be on demand. So at any point in time when they request for the resource, that resource should be ready and available for use. Okay, so we will see each of the 5 essential characteristics, the 3 service models, and the 4 deployment models in the coming slides. So as you can see from this slide, the 5 computing essential characteristics of cloud computing as defined by NIST are on-demand self-service, wherein, as I already told you, it should be without any human intervention. You can go ahead and create a resource for yourself. So if you compare it with your traditional on-premises infrastructure, there you cannot directly go and instantiate a virtual machine. You will have to go to your IT team if you're working in an organization, or if you want it for your personal use, you will have to go to a market to purchase it, and it will take few days of time. But in case of cloud computing, you can do it instantaneously within few minutes. You will be able to create a machine and start using it. The second characteristics is a broad network access, which means the cloud resource should be accessible over the internet or intranet, whichever is available. So in case of private clouds, it should be accessible over internet if you have installed it within your on-premises, and within the if it is a public cloud, it should be accessible over the internet. The third characteristic which I talked about is resource pooling. Again, here in resource pooling, as I mentioned, the resources which the cloud provider provides should be available in form of pools. So in a public cloud format, so if we take an example of Microsoft Azure, they will have huge data centers across the world, and they have hundreds of thousands of VMs lying there in a form of pool. Okay, so whenever you want a resource or a virtual machine or a storage device or anything, you can just instantiate it on your cloud portal, and from that particular pool, you will be assigned one resource. And once you are done your work, you will release that resource, and it will be going back to that same pool from where some other user across the globe can use it. Then the fourth essential characteristic is the rapid elasticity, which means that when a resource like a compute or storage is assigned to a user, then it should be elastic enough to scale to the user requirements. When I say scale, it means that when the load increases during the peak time, the user should have that flexibility to scale that particular compute or storage resource, like virtual machine or a storage device or anything. So if you take an example of e-commerce websites like Flipkart or Azure, Amazon, they announce some sales on the Independence Day or Republic Day. So on those particular days when the demand is very high because of high discounts, the load on the infrastructure is very high. Okay, so per second the request which will be coming will be much higher than on the other days when there are no discounts available. Okay, so on those days, definitely the e-commerce website will not want to purchase new hardware and bring in on their on-premises for a few days and then again sell it into the market. So cloud here helps them to instantiate new VMs or cloud storage devices in a very less amount of time, and then again release it back. And finally, the cloud provider should offer all these services in a form of metered kind of facility should be available. So the user should be charged only for what they have used. And so it should be like our electric meter or a gas meter. So for on a particular month basis, if you are using only for 5 hours a particular resource, say virtual machine, then you should be charged only for those 5 hours and not for the entire month. So these are the 5 essential characteristics. If any cloud provider claims that they are a cloud service provider, then they should follow these 5 characteristics. And based on that, we can call them as a cloud. So you might be knowing about the topmost cloud providers like Amazon or Azure or Google. So all of them follows these 5 principles or characteristics of a cloud service. Moving on to the next slide. So as again defined by NIST, there are 3 different service models of a particular cloud. So on premises, which is a traditional model of operating infrastructure, everybody knows about it, where you have to go to the market and purchase the hardware for yourself if you are running a small company. If you are working for a large organization, then you will have to request your IT department to create resources for you by creating huge server spaces. Then if there are multiple teams within the organization, each of the team will have to request the IT team to install the operating system of their requirement on those hardwares. Then some teams might be working on Java middleware or Python runtime or Node.js runtime. So all the installations, procuring of the hardware, installation of the runtime, and finally creating and deploying of the application, everything is the responsibility of the end user. But if you take service from any cloud service provider, then some of this task will be taken care by the cloud provider based on the model which you have opted for. So if you have opted for an infrastructure as a service, which is also called as a IaaS. So if you go for IaaS service, then the procurement of the infrastructure will be taken care by the cloud service provider. As you can see, the networking, storage, servers, and virtualization all are marked in dark blue color, which means the cloud service provider will manage for you. And you only have to take care of the operating system installation, whether you want a Linux or Windows operating system. Recently, Amazon last week just announced that they are now offering virtual machines with Mac OS also. So if you want to use a Mac operating system Apple provided by Apple, then you can create a virtual machine from using Amazon service. Still, other cloud providers are yet to provide Mac OS as one of their any virtual machines running on Mac OS. Then you will, in the infrastructure service, you also have to take care of your middlewares and the runtime, like Java runtime or a Node.js, or some middleware softwares like MQs or any other integration softwares which you need to connect, which you will require to connect to some other applications. And obviously your data and applications will be your ownership. But if you want a little more flexibility in terms of operating system and the middleware installation also, then you can go for a platform as a service. So we will see one example of platform as a service in the later slides, where web application can be deployed directly without worrying about any of the virtual machines or operating system. Just depending on the runtime which you are using, you can request for a platform. Like if you're running a Java web application, you can request for web service plan, which supports the Java web application. Otherwise, if you are running a JavaScript based web application, you can request for a Node.js kind of runtime and deploy your application there. So only tasks now the developers can focus only on the applications and data part. All the underlying cores are taken care by the cloud service provider. So here there is a little bit relief, but there are some disadvantages also. Here you will not get much flexibility. If you want to change at anything at runtime, then you will have to depend on the cloud service provider. And finally, the software as a service model, which everybody are using in our day-to-day life, like Gmail is one of the software as a service kind of thing, where you can use it freely, of course, but if you are using it for a professional purpose, you might have to pay for it. You will not get a customized email ID for your particular business. You will have to use @gmail.com if you want to use a free one. But if you want to get a personalized email ID from Gmail, you can request it by paying some amount. So you here in software as a service, you never have to worry about any of these requirements, like getting a hardware or installing the email clients or email softwares which will be running on those servers, which will take care of the sending and receiving of the emails. Everything is taken care by Google. Some other examples include like Microsoft Office 365. Again, if you want to install, use Word or PowerPoint or Excel, you can directly pay for a subscription of Microsoft O365 and use all these softwares as a service. I hope I'm going at a very slow pace or a medium pace, which is you are able to understand. So right now, I guess all the lines are muted, but you can definitely post your questions in the question chat box, and I'll answer them, all of them at the end. So the third characteristic, or the third bucket which NIST defined, was deployment models. So there were 4 deployment models defined by cloud NIST, like private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, and the community cloud. So private cloud is again, initially when this definition was defined, there were not much products available in the market by different cloud providers. But if you see today, Amazon has come up with its own private clouds offering called as Outpost. Google offers Anthos as one of their offerings. Then Microsoft Azure also offers OpenStack as one of their private clouds. So these private clouds can be installed on your on-premises infrastructure, and it will be accessible only to the people within your organization. The public cloud, everyone is aware. The clouds which are available to general public, anybody can register using their credit cards or debit cards and then start using it. So these are the shared resources. So if your data is very highly confidential and you don't want to go to a public cloud, and you want to avoid the risk of getting hacked by some hackers or somebody, you can obviously opt for private cloud. And then there are some community clouds available. If you recently, Microsoft has announced some industry clouds like BFSI cloud or manufacturing cloud or the retail cloud. So for a specific community, if a cloud is targeted to suffice for their requirements, for example, BFSI industry has many regulations in different countries. Like in Europe, there are many regulations like MiFID regulation, or in US, again, there are different kinds of regulatory bodies are there who want the data of the customers to be kept in a particular format. So those requirements cannot be fulfilled in a public cloud. And for that, special kind of provisions are made in a community cloud. So Microsoft has announced recently, maybe tomorrow or day after, they will announce it officially in their, they are going to conduct a conference in which they will be presenting those sessions on 2nd of March. So anybody who is interested can go and search about it. And finally, the hybrid cloud is a combination of 2 or more of this public, private, and community cloud. So you can, the most common combination is a public cloud and a private cloud. So you have some components which is very confidential, the database on the private cloud in your on-premise, and the remaining applications which require huge like for machine learning or artificial intelligence. If your application requires huge compute power or storage power, you can obviously go to public cloud, where you can run your programs for whatever time and then release the components and come back. So you don't have a binding to pay for that high resources for a lifetime. But you can also combine public cloud and a community cloud, or a private cloud and a community cloud, or you can combine all of them based on your organization requirements. So if a particular cloud provider offers all these 5 essential characteristics, the 3 different service models and 4 deployment models, they can be termed as a cloud provider. So here I've listed some of the advantages or why we should go for a cloud. Uh, we have already talked about most of them, but very briefly, I'll cover again a few of them. So reliability is what states how reliable your cloud is. If there are any conditions like downtime is there, or any disaster has occurred, even in those conditions, how reliable your cloud is. Without any downtime, you are still able to use it. So this one of the characteristics defines which cloud provider you should go with. Okay, so you should consider all these criteria while making a decision which cloud provider is more reliable in terms of service level agreements. Then the scalability, I have already given an example of an e-commerce website that on during the peak time on their sales are announced. So during those days, the infrastructure should be scalable. So usually the cloud providers offers 2 kinds of scalability. One is the vertical scalability, where you can increase the hardware in terms of RAM and CPU on the same virtual machine. And the second is the horizontal scalability, where you can increase the multiple number of VMs in the same region. Then comes the elasticity part, which means the cloud, whether it is capable to match the number of resources allocated to the actual number of resources which are required at any time. So the cloud application can be configured to always have the resources that they need at any point in time. One example is auto scaling, in which you can configure when your scaling should happen. Okay, so if I take example of Microsoft Azure, when you create a virtual machine, you have a facility to set some criteria that, okay, you enable the auto scaling. And what are the criteria for auto scaling? If the compute power goes beyond 80%, or some other example could be if if the software which is running on that virtual machine is processing some messages coming from MQ. If the number of messages coming from MQ per second increases beyond, say, 100, then your current virtual machine will not be capable of handling it. So automatically it should scale up. So this facility to configure scalability is called as elasticity. Agility, again, I've talked about how fast you can scale up and scale down, or how fast after you click on that enabling the resource or provisioning of the resource, after how much time. So usually if you go to any cloud provider today, they are so fast enough that within a few minutes of time, you can get most heavy virtual machine enabled for you. So if you have to get a 10 core CPU or a 40 core CPU also, with 8 terabytes of RAM, you can get it in within a few seconds. Then comes the geo distribution, which is more like, which means that application and the data which are deployed in the data centers provided by Azure across the globe. So whether it is distributed across the geography properly or not. So if you have a client base for your application located in US majorly, so you can select the data center of these cloud providers which is situated in US. On the other side, if you have some cloud applications which has a user base mostly in Australia, then you can select the data centers of Australia, so that the in latency which is faced during the user accessing the application will be very less. And finally, the disaster recovery is when a disaster occurs, like, some regions are more prone to natural calamities like earthquakes or what you say tsunamis. So in such cases, how capable your cloud provider is in providing disaster recovery services like backups in terms of database or the virtual machine backup itself. So on daily basis, if you take a backup of all these virtual machines or database, and in case of a disaster occurs, you can just on some few clicks and within 5 to 10 minutes, you can bring up the your services in another region, and your business will still keep running without any issues. So moving on to the next slide. Here I've captured a few trends which are the very latest trends. You can You can find more about these trends on the link given here at the bottom. There are many trends which I've captured just a snippet of it. As you can see, the left side chart talks about the number of different cloud providers which are available today. The AWS is leading the top, then it is followed by Azure, Google, Oracle. So what I'm trying to say here is the public cloud adoption by different enterprises has increased a lot today. Enterprises across the globe are using Amazon, and around 70% are using Azure. So there are some new players in the market also, like Oracle Infrastructure Cloud or the IBM Public Cloud or Alibaba Cloud. Alibaba is a very big cloud provider in China. Still, they have not captured a huge market in India, or you say Asia and US region, because of obviously some political reasons. But yeah, if you go to China, Alibaba is a top cloud provider in China. The second chart talks about the organizational spend of public cloud. You can see that in the next 12 months, the spend will be increasing by almost 47%. This is the prediction done by Flexera. So why this kind of prediction has occurred? So recent some incidents because of this COVID-19, many of the organizations had to close, right, due to the lockdowns. And when there was lockdowns, nobody used to can go to the offices, right? So the only option which was remaining was to take help of the cloud to keep their business running, so that they can still. So you might have heard that some very big IT companies in the India as well as abroad, their businesses were still running and they are running in profit even then. Since the last 1 year there was lockdown across. So it was possible only because of the cloud, so that anybody can work from anywhere, from the home or from wherever they are located. So people who had traveled to far remote villages also in their hometown, from there also they were able to work using the internet. Only internet was required to connect, and a laptop or a machine, so they can connect and start working on the development of the application whichever they are working on. And this trend is now not going to settle. Still, the many cloud providers are coming in the market every day, and the cloud consumption will increase in the next 12 months or so. So it is a very good opportunity to keep learning about the cloud. So this till now it was generic about the cloud and the cloud providers. Now I'll give you a very brief glimpse about what is Microsoft Azure. It is also one of the public clouds. Obviously, it is not on the top. AWS is the topmost cloud, but in terms of number of clients, the reason is AWS had started much earlier, in around 2006 or so, and Microsoft Azure and others came much later into the game of cloud providers. And hence they are on the second number. But even then, if you see that if you want to start with your cloud certifications, if you want to start with the Microsoft Azure learning, they offer many different roles in which you can start. So if you are very much inclined towards development of your applications, you can go with a developer role. For the developer role, again, you can go for the developer associate certification. For administrator, you can go for administrator associate certification. If you are good in both development and administration, you can go with DevOps engineer kind of certification. And obviously, after a good amount of experience, after 5 or 10 years of doing a development and administration, you can definitely go for solutions architect. You can go for solutions architect certification even in the beginning of the career, but it will not make sense because you will not be able to architect a solution unless you have good experience doing a development or administrating that application. So one common thing you will see here across any of these certification, if you do the one of the common certification is the Azure Fundamentals. We will have a quick glimpse of it, what Azure Fundamentals is. Then there are some other specialized role created by Azure, Microsoft Azure. If you are inclined towards database, you can go for data engineer. Or if you're inclined towards artificial intelligence or machine learning, you can go with AI engineer or data scientist. And obviously, security in itself is a completely different stream. When you do a development or certification or administration certification, you will learn about security, but not in a very detailed. And in today's world, when everything is public on public cloud, security is of prime concern. So security engineer is also one of the good roles in the industry today to pursue a career. You can find more information about all these certifications at the link given below. Here I will talk very briefly about Microsoft Azure Fundamentals. If you go with Microsoft Azure Fundamental certification, you will learn about all the core Azure services, the management tools which Azure provides, the security features at not in very detail, but at a very high level. You will understand what general security is and how to configure network security. So for example, if you are creating a virtual machine in Azure, then you cannot keep it open to everybody. So how to configure the security so that only specific people are able to access it by whitelisting the IPs or creating a firewalls around it. Then you will also learn about the identity management, like user creation, user roles assignment, user different aspects of the user management, then the governance, privacy, compliance. And the topmost important part in learning about cloud is to understand the cost management. So there are many good things about the cloud, but again, if you don't understand the cost management part, you will be landing up into a very high amount of bills at the month end. So you, whatever resource you use, you should be very much clear that what will be the per minute cost or a per second cost. In today's world, they are also offering services which are cost like serverless services are based on the per second costing model. So if you are aware of the how the cost will be assigned to that particular component, you can better manage your bills. So yeah, in terms of demo, I wanted to capture a demo, but considering the time limitations, what I can offer you is how to create an Azure account on Microsoft Azure. If you go to this particular website, which I listed here, you will need a credit card or a debit card, and then you will have to register, but you will get $200 of free credit for the initial 30 days. So you will not be charged. When you say $200, it will be around 14,500 Indian rupees. You can use any of the service across the entire Azure for free for 30 days. But even after 30 days, you will be asked whether you want to upgrade to the upgrade your account and then start using it by paying it. Otherwise, if you don't upgrade your account, you will not be able to access it. But even then, there are some of the services, popular services, which are free for 12 months. We will have a look at which services are free for 12 months. And then there are 25 plus services which are always free for lifetime. But these always free services are such services which are kind of integration services or middleware services, which you will not be able to use it as a standard without creating or without paying some money to Microsoft. So those are kind of middleware services. We will have a quick glimpse of all of this in the coming slides. So the point here on this slide is to understand that if you want to learn Azure, you will need a phone number for verification and a credit card details and a Microsoft account. You can also open your Microsoft Azure account using a GitHub account, because GitHub is also owned by Microsoft. So if you have an account on GitHub, you can directly go to Azure and start using Azure by providing the credit card details. So this slide talks about some of the services which are free for 12 months. If you see here, there are Linux virtual machines which are free for 750 hours. If you see, there is a criteria here that only B1S standard tier virtual machine is available. Now, B1S standard tier virtual machine is a very small virtual machine which will give you only 1 GB of space in RAM and 2 cores of CPU power. So if you want to run some heavy application like machine learning or artificial intelligence, definitely you will not be able to use it. But for learning purpose, you will definitely be able to create a virtual machine, how to connect to that virtual machine, how to set up a security configuration of that virtual machine. Similarly, like Linux, Windows is also available as a virtual machine. As I told you, Microsoft has still not provided a Mac OS virtual machine. But again, for 1 year, for the next 12 months, even after your credit expires, $200 credit expires in next 30 days, you can still use this virtual machine for 750 hours in total for the next 12 months. So then there are some disk, 64 GB of 2 hard disks you can use. You can use blob storage of 5 GB, which is used for storing your files and photos. There is a separate file storage, 5 GB storage allowed here. Again, if you see a locally redundant storage, so this is an advanced topic. It will take a lot of time to explain what is LRS right now, but it is a redundancy kind of mechanism, as the name suggests, locally redundant storage. So whatever file you store here in the blob storage, it will be a backup of that file will be taken in 3 different data centers within that region. So it is locally redundant storage kind of facility is provided. So at any point in time, if one data center goes down, you will have copy of your data, photos or files which you uploaded to Blob Storage. Similarly, you will have access to SQL database, Cosmos database. Cosmos database is nothing but the NoSQL kind of database where you can store your key value pairs in a JSON format. Then there are many more services. This is just a glimpse of it. I've just taken one screenshot of it. But if you go to this link which I provided at the bottom, many more services you can see there, which are free for 12 months. Once you are able to create your account on Azure and you log into Azure, this is how the portal will look like. You will have this facility to directly create a virtual machine or a web service, web application service, or a storage account. Okay. And all of these applications or whatever virtual machines or storage account or application service which you will create, you can group them by resource groups. So resource groups are very important in when you are working in a very big organization, when there are multiple teams working. So to keep your resources separate in a complete different, it is like a folder in your Windows machine, right? So if you have multiple files and you want to group them into one location, what you will do in Windows, you will just put it in one folder. So here also similarly, you can create a resource group, and all the resources which are related to one application, you can just dump it into this resource group. So at any point in time, if you delete this entire resource group, all the resources within that resource group will be deleted. So this is the slide where I was talking about an example of how to create and deploy a web application. So you can see that there are multiple resources from the Azure has been created here. I'll quickly read out the names first. The Azure Active Directory is used here. Azure DNS, that is the domain naming services used. Azure Key Vault, App Service Plan, Azure Web App, then the Azure Database, that is a SQL database. Then there comes the Azure Monitor and the Log Analytics. So if you see that all these resources which were created belong to one web application, and hence we have created one resource group and grouped all these resources inside one resource group. Now what will happen when the request will come from internet for your web application, which is deployed on web app service, it will first go to the Azure Active Directory to check whether you are an authorized user to access this web application. Only if there is an entry and your username and password matches with the records in the Active Directory, then you will be allowed to connect to the application service. Now in this application service, there is a facility to create multiple slots. So application service is an example of platform as a service. Okay, underlying this platform as a service, the infrastructure is the same. The virtual machines might be used at the bottom, but the only advantage is you don't have to take care of the virtual machines. Microsoft Azure will create virtual machines and it will be abstracted in form of an app service plan. You just have to select the plan. You want a very premium plan in which high storage and high compute power is provided, or if you want a free plan in which only 1 GB of RAM will be provided to you. Based on your requirement, you can select the plan and then create an app service. So once you create an app service, you will have this facility of creating multiple slots. You might be doing a development. So during the development, you will not have anything in production slot. But once the development is successful, then you can move it to the staging slot, in which the testers in your organization will do the testing of your application. And once the testing is done, they will approve the application. So just by a click of the button, your application will move to the production slot and it will be running. So at any point in time, if something goes wrong in the production version of your application, you can roll back it with the old version of your application. So these kind of facilities are provided by Microsoft Azure. So that's why it is called as a platform as a service. And definitely these SQL servers are again platform as a service. You don't have to take care of creating a virtual machine or installing a database software on it. Everything is installed directly for you. That is a platform as a service is available. You just have to say that I want this virtual database for this much amount of storage, and this should be my performance in terms of number of CPUs I want, and a SQL server will be ready running for you. You just have to give the URLs and the connection string to your web application, and your servers will be accessible. Okay, and now the Azure Key Vault is used to store all the passwords which are required for the database or your application service. So if your application service is connecting to the database using a username and password, then those passwords can be stored here in the Azure Key Vault, so that it will be accessible only to the authorized users and not anybody else. And finally, if you are since you are using Azure Monitor, which will be used to monitor the performance of your application service, as I told you, you can configure the alerts here. So that, for example, if the performance of your CPU or consumption of your CPU is increasing beyond 80%, it will immediately generate an alert, and in the Azure Monitor, it will give you a signal or an email. So then you can take action accordingly. Or you can also configure auto scaling feature, where you can say that, okay, if my CPU percentage goes beyond this particular threshold, it should create a new, it should increase the service app service plan. And the log analytics are basically used for if your application is if your experience in Java, you might be aware that some of the logs will be generated at the during the execution of the program. Okay, so it might be runtime logs, or it might be just for checking whether the services are running fine or not. All kind of logs, information logs or error logs, everything will go into the log analytics workspace, and it will be stored there. So in case of any error or any breakdown happens, you can directly go to the logs. Here you will be able to sort the logs in forms of tables, and you can also see some charts based on which you can easily point out that where the problem could be, and then you can resolve the issues. So that's all from my side. I guess we have reached the end of the presentation.